good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are today. We are very, very grateful to be here with you. My name is Ana Yogan. This is another episode of Reaprendência International podcast. You can find our channel, Reaprendência International, and Conscientious Nursing Evolution at YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. Today we are going to explore life and purpose. I have a very important question to ask you guys today. Are you living the life you were meant to be? To answer this, we are going to receive our friend Helen Matos. Uh, She's going to help us explore life purpose through the lenses of neuroscience, psychoanalysis, and conscientiology. Let's discover how our brain, unconscious patterns, and deepest aspirations shape our choices and gain practical insights in living with greater clarity and authenticity. Helen Matos is a researcher of consciousness and human development whose work bridges conscientiology, neuroscience, psychoanalysis, and anthropology and personal transformation. She's originally from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, but she lives in the United States since 1999. She's an archaeologist. She studied film at Full Sail University in Florida with a focus on documentary production and film editing. Helen is a dedicated researcher of conscientiology since 1997. She began her studies at EPC, Institute of Projectiology and Conscientiology in Rio de Janeiro, and her work integrates decades of research into consciousness, human development, and existential purpose. In the recent years, she is also specialized in neuroscience and psychoanalysis, investigating how those fields contribute to self-understanding, personal transformation, and restructuring one's life trajectory. Welcome, Ellen. It's very good to have you here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Anna. I always enjoy being here with you. I'm so glad you invited me. Thank you.
Of course, our pleasure. I am going to add your slides to the page and see how you want to start this.
Okay. Um, it's just a very quick presentation just to give us a baseline on what the intentions are today, what our main objectives are. So the question that we have here is, are you living the life you were meant to live? Why do we keep repeating the same patterns even when we truly want to change? Sometimes we feel like we are not developing all our potential, and still we have the motivation. Some of us have discipline, but things don't change. Things keep repeating. It's a weird feeling of being in an in not being able to actually create a linear trajectory. So most people believe they don't change because they lack motivation or discipline. But my question here is, what if the real reasons are much deeper? What if it's not just that? If that is actually not enough? So, I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered why some people sincerely want to change their lives, but they keep repeating the same emotional patterns? They may have different relationships, may have different jobs, change jobs, careers. They may even move to different cities, but somehow they keep repeating the same story. And that's something that started to bother me a lot after I don't know how many of you know my story, but I am what in conscientiology we say we refer to as a task resumer. So that means that I am in conscientiology since 1997, but I was in this path of not having a linear pathway, a linear trajectory. So I had what we call some deviations, and those deviations actually brought some didn't bring me that fulfillment, that sense of fulfillment that I was going for in my life. So the question here is why? Why does this happen? So psychology has one answer, neuroscience has another, conscientiology offers an additional perspective, as we are going to see today here. But today I want to explore how these perspectives, these three perspectives, may complement each other. We are not going to focus on one or another. We are going to see how they can complement each other and help us in our self research journey.
But Ellen, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Uh, Actually, Conscientiology thinks about the series of lives that we have and the multiple dimensions that we have. So, do you think these patterns could be repeated from another lives as well?
Oh, we are going to approach that in a little bit. Yes, this is taken into consideration. What we have here now is we can actually complement the knowledge that we acquired a while ago from psychoanalysis or from Freud, some theories that he developed in his time about our unconscious mind, our behavioral patterns that maybe we are not even aware of. Nowadays, we have neuropsychology and neuroscience developing some experimental, empirical, clinical theories about all this with a baseline on the brain itself. So these two approaches, they actually converse, they converge with each other, and we can see these patterns being tested and being observed uh, on these two universes, the brain, the influences of the brain or our human body, our soma, and the influence of those unconscious decisions and patterns and behaviors that we keep repeating without even noticing, without knowing, without being intentional. So, and in conscientiology, when we bring the multidimensionality, the holosome is very important here because our approach, especially here today, is that our vehicles of manifestation, they are, we can use them as resources, as tools for our evolution. So if they are tools and we are going towards our self awareness and self knowledge, then we cannot leave one vehicle or another without awareness. We have to understand how they actually interact, how they influence each other, how they manifest in our emotional situations, in our intellectual situations, and so forth. So we are going to use here the question that psychoanalysis brings to us with this theory. Why do we repeat? Why am I repeating behaviors and patterns that may be hurting me, may be hurting my existential life here on earth? why am I do I have that tendency? Why am I not noticing what I can do actually in order to give to stop the whatever is hurting my manifestation, my performance in life. Neuroscience, on the other hand, will be asking us, how does the brain learn these repetitions? So we keep repeating our manifestation, we keep repeating things, behaviors that may not be useful for us in evolutionary terms. And uh, what kind of influence is it on the brain, and what kind of influence the brain is giving us as well in our behavior? And in conscientiology, we are going to ask the following question: could there be an even deeper layer influencing our choices? And it has everything to do with your question, Anna. So instead of competing, instead of canceling each other, instead of dismissing anything, we are going to get these perspectives and we are going to complete one another and get what they have that can best help us to analyze this performance, this existential manifestation of the human being. So over here, we bring the question again, why do we repeat the same patterns? So Freud proposed the idea of repetition compulsion. I don't know if how many of you or if you have heard of it, but we unconsciously recreate familiar emotional experiences, even the ones that make us suffer, even if it's something that we don't want, we want to prevent in our lives, we want to avoid, and unconsciously we end up recreating. So that has a lot to do with childhood traumas, for instance. That's the one example that can actually reflect very clearly this type of behavior. Let's say, for instance, a human, an individual that had a lack of effective emotional, healthy emotional relationship with the father, and then that created some patterns, survival patterns for that child. That child inadvertently and unconsciously started to develop some habits, some thinking processes to actually survive that lack of love, lack of connection with the father. And in the future, let's say that adult starts having trouble in the relationships and keeps asking himself or herself that question: why do I choose these people? Why am I always suffering? Why can't I be happy in my relationships? Why do I always choose someone that will hurt me, and so forth? So the this theory, I'm not going to get into much detail now, but and I'd like to tell you guys that we have a PDF that we can share with you. I will make available my email address here so I can actually share with you guys all the information, references, scientific papers that I like to recommend, and books, but and infographics. I have some infographics as well, but basically this kind of behavioral repetition is something that, unless we become aware of the reasons, the origin of it, and the way and or the how they happen, there's nothing we can do in order to actually overcome and recreate our thought patterns, our behaviors, and our habits in order to actually even help with the neuroplasticity, that neuropsychology and neurosciences nowadays are very have several studies confirming. So the repeated emotional experiences literally can shape neural pathways. Like in Conscientiology, we talk about thoughts, right? Which is the thoughts, the sentiments or the emotions, and the energies, what motivates, what moves us into action, our behaviors, right? They are always connected. The thoughts, the emotions, the behavior, they are always connected. They don't have a separation. So when we are thinking something, and then that thought may become an emotion, and that emotion will trigger an action, and those things are actually interacting with our brain, our human brain. And there are even nowadays the research confirms that there are several researches that confirm that there are places in our brain where we can actually find the pathways for emotions. So the emotion is not just on our emotional vehicle, on our psychosoma. Those emotions, they come from that vehicle, but they also get installed and they start living in our brain. And our brain is the our aspect more connected to our animalistic manifestation. So that's why it's so hard for us to actually, if we don't become aware of all these patterns, it's very hard for us to actually have free will and be free to make our decisions and decide our path in life. So that repeated emotional experiences, they can shape our pathways. And from a conscientiology perspective, I'm going to ask you a question now. What if childhood is not always the beginning of the story? So it has everything to do with what I was saying. What if, in psychoanalysis, we have this theory that in childhood we start developing these traumas, these traumatic reactions to stimuli in life. But what if childhood is not the beginning? What if some children react so intensely to what they receive because there are certain experiences that resonate with unresolved paratraumatic imprints. And in this case, paratraumatic, if you're not familiar with the term, it is connected with past experiences, past life experiences. So this is something that I started to question myself as I went deeper in this self research. I started to question, well, another person in my situation would have reacted the same. No, we are all different. We are all singular, right? We are all different individuals. So, what is it that makes that difference? What if what we call our personality is much more complex and much more than what we think? So, from a conscientiology perspective, what if some of these reactions may even reflect that distance that from the life that we originally planned? So the good news is that the brain can change. Yeah, for the longest time, we actually, as our civilization, believed that no, we would lose our cells and that's it, they would die. That we didn't have much information about neuroplasticity or anything, but now we can actually have hope. We can change our brain pathways, our brain functioning. And On top of that, consciousness can change. So our future is not determined by our past. We have past experiences. We may react one way or another, but we don't have to be stuck in that reaction. And so basically, if the brain changes, the consciousness can change too. So every intentional thought, every intentional emotion, and please pay attention to the word intentional, okay? Every intentional behavior helps build a new pattern. And intentional means that you are in charge. We are in charge of our thoughts, or of our emotions, and our behavior. So, this is where neuroplasticity and consciential self transformation meet. Another thing that I'd like to bring to you guys is I put side by side here. So we just talked about neuroplasticity a little bit, right? And the repeated conscious practice. So possibly new neural connections. But in conscientiology, we also have resources. We have tools that we can use. In this case specifically, I'm bringing forward two or three, maybe, but one of them is in conscienciometry, the comfort technique that I learned in a course in one of our institutions, and I use this technique a lot. I love this technique. um, that technique helps me bring more self-awareness, and has helped me self-restructure the way I think, the way I feel, what I feel, the choices I make. And this has been opening up a different path for me in order to make possible my existential realignment. As I said before, I deviated. I had some behavioral manifestations that didn't allow me to actually go in a linear path on my journey, on my existential journey. But fortunately, I've been able to mediate, and now things are looking better. So we use these practical techniques. First, we recognize our patterns, then intentionally we replace these patterns intentionally. Little by little, the reactive responses, they start losing strength, and something beautiful happens when it starts happening like this. The purpose becomes easier for us to recognize, because perhaps purpose was never lost, because it was simply hidden. It was hidden beneath layers of automatic reactions and automatic negative positions. So, to finalize here, um, I what I'm bringing here today is based on my personal case study, my self research trajectory, and which was developed, has been working on the psychoanalysis theories that I told you, and I've been deepening my knowledge about that. That helps me intellectually. Neuroscience, especially in therapy, I've been uh, one of my therapists is a specialist in Gestalt and EMDR. The EMDR is a technique that of the movement of the eyes, or it can be touched too. So these techniques help us desensitize emotional negativity, emotional response to things that happened before when we didn't have the autonomy to actually choose how we wanted to react. And neuroplasticity, I've been noticing some changes. And of course, I can't confirm 100% because I haven't had any image of my brain that made, but I can recognize different pathways on my cognition, my responses to stress, my responses to surprises. So, and in conscienciometry and conscienciotherapy, we can actually find ways to promote self research and intentional restructuring. And all that, why? Why did I go through this trajectory, this journey? Because I was unhappy. I was very unhappy with the results I was acquiring in my life. And when we can't see our purpose, we can actually find and tune in with the life that we were meant to live. That brings that insatisfaction feeling, that brings that melancholy. And in proexology, I found that these changes, they can actually be possible by even deepening the knowledge about proaxis. So purpose here, for us to think about it, okay? Purpose is not found, it is remembered. We come to this life with a purpose, and it's our job to remember this purpose. And all this confusion, all these confused patterns that we keep repeating, they may be hindering that journey of remembering it. So every conscious choice brings us closer to the life we intended to live. And that's what I wanted to start with. But we can start the debate now. We can start talking and see if Anna, if you have any questions or if we have questions in the audience. Anna, you're muted.
Getting there.
Now,
Hi
hi again.
again. So, anyhow, I'd like to make a digression in terms of your history, how you came to think the way you think today. You have this background in anthropology, you have this background in archaeology, which has a lot to do with studying culture, studying human behavior. How do you think those fields of knowledge influenced your journey? And I also saw I actually heard a very interesting phrase today. I was watching a movie, and they said that this way. I'll try to reproduce it here. The scars show how your journey has been, but they don't define how your future is going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, do you think this makes sense in terms of your history and these other fields of knowledge?
Of course, I do. I think that we make choices, we make decisions in a daily basis. And they can be many micro decisions like uh, am I drinking enough water? Am I poisoning myself eating something that's making any kind of harm to my body? Or am I actually doing everything that I need to do in a daily basis in order to achieve a goal in that I have like for a year from now or 2 years from now? What kind of retirement am I going to have? Things like that. So, yes, what happens is what I noticed is that when we are not aware of how our brain and our unconscious mind are interacting, we are not actually conscious on our decisions. We keep repeating some habits and some patterns of behaviors that may harming our future. And that happened to me a lot and happens to a lot of people. A lot of people. And we actually don't understand why it's happening.
And
We think
sometimes it even feels comfortable,
it feels
right?
strong. Yes, because we try to avoid the unknown. We want to know. We want to be in control. Perfectionism is actually one of the traits that's most common on people that carry any kind of trauma from childhood. And I'm talking about complex trauma, complex PTSD. That's the chronic one. There are two different, now the research tells us that we have two different types of PTSD or trauma. One is that has been developing since they started studying about the results and effects of war in soldiers and everything else. And then later on, it grew to more parts of the population, some things that are happened to a person that she was not in control of, but it was one occurrence that actually shaped one kind of trauma. But that trauma doesn't shape that personality. The person has a sense of identity, and then and that person has a type of reaction to a specific occurrence in their lives. The complex trauma or complex PTSD is what we say that it's that person, mostly a child, has been vulnerable to people that they know, people that were actually in the position of being protective and raising that child, and that child was exposed to some of situations that can cause trauma. That person start losing the sense of identity, the sense of doubt. Self-doubt is very common. Perfectionism is very common. A tendency to go after control of people and of situations is a tendency in these cases. So if we actually get these specific cases and we bring to our reality, including a multidimensionality, multiple lives, so we know that our past lives, they can't have been all, roses and cakes and, we
Butterflies.
we went through so much terrible things, right? As extra physical consciousnesses and intraphysical consciousness in previous lives. So, what kind of trauma have we developed and that we brought in this life? So that's why I made that question before. What can guarantee that my personality is exactly my personality? What if I am a result of my emotional triggers, emotional reactions, because I'm not aware of them? What do I do about it? So once you start to map out this, you start to gain more autonomy. You will start to reflect and see exactly when these reactions are actually taking over instead of you making decisions, instead of you making your choices. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating when it starts happening, because that sense of autonomy, that sense of identity, it starts to shape. And then you realize that even in your brain, things are happening in a different way. Like during my period of deviation from my activities in conscientiology, I developed clinical depression and I had to be medicated and everything. And the last crisis, the last depressive crisis that I had was not long ago. And I had to go back to the medication. But since then, I was able to actually reprocess and resignify a lot of the things that were coming and to the surface. And little by little, I was actually able to start see changes in uh, my chemical reactions in the brain to a point where medication is not necessary anymore. So the vicinity changed, the behavior changed, which is allowing me to make better decisions, to recreate different habits, different a different approach to life, and so forth. So yes, I agree with that. We are not doomed to live the result of our traumas.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very true. And especially because people are going to start thinking, so I am predestined to live a life determined by what I chose before being in this life. So it's not like this. Actually, there is a relationship because the psychosoma carries all these memories from our past lives and it kinds of shapes our soma based on those lives. But we have the power to change, to
Yeah,
implement change.
it
And
is takes work.
it takes a lot of effort, it's not easy. Yeah.
It
And
hurts.
I
Uh,
remember talking to students that take our courses in Conscientiology, and I compare uh, our society actually nowadays as that story of the frog inside of the boiling water. Like at first we feel very comfortable and we feel very relaxed, but then the water starts to become hotter and hotter and hotter, and you want to escape that and you want to change your life. So let's not wait until the water is that hot, and
yeah,
let's start looking at ourselves to implement these changes.
I love this
And
example. That's
yeah,
exactly this repetition, this compulsion to
mhm,
repeat our unhealthy patterns is just like that. We are in the boiling water, but little by little we get used to it and then
mhm,
we get comfortable.
yeah, until we feel that's too hot, and
Yeah,
we are forced to change. Otherwise, we are going to die in that hot water,
yeah.
right? So we have a question from Eliane, and she's talking about how can we adopt a new habit. She mentions that some people say that 21 days would be enough to be prone to incorporate it into our routine. Do you have any more information about it? What do you think about this, Helen?
I think about it all the time. I am really bad at this. That's why
Who isn't?
that's why I take it so seriously, And this and another thing, right, that I didn't mention before, I was recently in the recent years, I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD. So my
That's another thing.
yeah, so my brain never helped. But you see, there are some exercises, and there are some specific therapies that we can have that can help us develop better habits. Um, I in my case specifically, Eliani, what I am learning to do because of all the tendencies to perfectionism and to control, I am respecting my moment. I live in the present moment now. I used to live either in the past or in the future. In the past, with the problems and the results of bad experiences, and in the future with the anxiety, the sense of impotence, and that anxiety of being afraid of not being able to do what I have to do. Now, what I do is I try to live in the present, and I try to respect my vehicles. I try to respect my body, my physical body. I respect my energetic body, and I try to be in tune with them all the time to try to map out how am I doing right now. If there is a feeling or an emotion that is incapacitating me of doing something, I try to understand if it's an energetic problem or if it is maybe a physical deficiency that I'm having, a nutritional deficiency or hormonal, or especially after menopause. Menopause, I learned in the recent years that menopause even changes our brain. So it's life is very hard
The
for
name
me.
already tells menopause.
Yeah,
It poses a lot of things.
yeah. So without being negligent and without being enabling to myself, but I try to respect. I don't want to harass myself, if I can say it, right? And activities that develop our intellectual and our mental somatic manifestation. These activities, they are very energizing too, so they help a lot. So I recently I started a, a few years ago I started using the bullet journaling method, and that Ryder Carroll invented, and he also has ADHD. He was diagnosed when he was a child, but he developed this method of productivity and organization, and I started using it, but I wasn't being very disciplined about it. But now I decide I recently I actually started to follow the steps literally, and it has been helping me a lot. So especially in ADHD, we have what we call temporal blindness or temporal myopia,
Myopia.
myopia.
Mhm.
So it's like out of sight, out of mind. We don't. We have a very. Have a hard time to actually remember things unless they are right there in front of us. And with the bullet journaling, this has been helping me because every single day I have access to my own notes and my own decisions, and I am reflecting about those decisions in a daily basis. There is also a technique that we've developed in our research group, the test resumers group. The the technique is called tide in Portuguese, and in English we translate it to disc, which is the daily reflection, self reflection, but with the objective of reconnecting with our intermissive personality, our intermissive consciousness. So this has been helping a lot as well. So that's something that keeps me more in tune with what's necessary for me in terms of habits, healthy habits. Well, and of course, a holosomatic approach is very important when we are talking about habits. We cannot be negligent with any of these vehicles. uh, our body, our energetic body, moving our, maneuvering our energies and everything, our thoughts, healthy thoughts, and emotions and our mental clarity as well.
Very, very good. And uh, we have like people that think of psychoanalysis as something antique and already outdated. Uh, I like Freud because I think he put a big dent on human pride because he proved to everybody that the subconscious is who actually uh, leads our life in most of the moments. And self awareness can be obviously acquired, but it demands effort, it demands work. Otherwise, we are going to be living on the automatic mode and, just go back to the same results over and over. Can you clarify a little more about this?
Yeah. Yes, this is one of the questions that I'm often asked because I talk about psychoanalysis and I talk about these theories, Freudian
Mhm.
theories and Lacan and and yes, for a lot of people these are outdated compared to modern psychology. But the answer is that the answer is it is more nuanced than a simple yes or no, you know. Like for instance, psychoanalysis fundamentally transformed, as I said before, transformed our understanding of the human mind. Psychoanalysis, this is widely acknowledged across psychology and psychiatry. So going back to the question that you made before about anthropology, it's um, it's it's part of my personality, but like intentionally, not unconsciously, but intentionally, it's part of my personality to embrace different disciplines, different approaches, different thoughts. And because we study different cultures, we study diversity, we study how humans develop in group, right? Especially in archaeology, we see the results of several civilizations or groups, communities, and everything. So, what I like about considering psychoanalysis is that that's it's been contributing to influence contemporary thought all this time, even if it's hidden. Like the unconscious mind, the defense mechanisms come from psychoanalysis, transference, intra-psychic conflict comes from psychoanalysis. The influence of early relationships, that's we've been talking about it, right? Childhood traumas and everything, psychoanalysis, repetitive behavioral patterns. So even researchers who do not identify as psychoanalysts, they generally recognize Freud's historical contribution to understanding human behavior. We cannot just get something that was developed because it was developed so long ago. We cannot just toss it away. You know, we have to understand the history, how that came to be, and then understand what kind of effects it may have now still. So, what changed in the role of psychoanalysis, right, within the scientific research in the beginning of the 80s, um, and especially after 2000? psychology increasingly adopted the principles of evidence. Let me see, I got it here. Evidence based practice, EBP. What does that mean? That means that we have several results from research that's empirical, clinical, and in the psychoanalytical theories, that is a little bit harder to actually achieve in the same way that psychology has been developing now. They have randomized trials, controlled trials, they have systematic reviews, they have meta analysis and standardized outcome measures. But this is where the criticism may come from. But several of Freud's original concepts, they such as the Oedipus complex, the death drive, the ID ego superego model, they theoretically they enrich all this research. They they have a hidden basis for all the work that has been done in psychology as a whole, and in contemporary psychology, right? So does that mean that psychoanalysis is ineffective? No, no. I have two therapists. One is my personal therapist, and the other one is my husband and I. We go to her, and so it's a couples therapy. The couples therapist is a psychoanalyst, and man, I that was the best decision I made because my personal therapist, he has this more empirical, clinical, practical, pragmatic approach with me, with the techniques, exercises, and everything, and behavioral stuff, and that. And she comes to center me, and she makes the right questions in the right moment, and then I go crazy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's right. And then I go back to him and I'm like, oh my gosh, look what I found out. I am doing this, this, and this. I think this is driven by this, this, and that. And he's like, whoa, all right, let's take care of this today then. So they complement each other.
Very good. And we have a question that kind of goes in the same line. Leona is asking, what are your thoughts on the idea that trauma is stored in the nervous system and that reversing it must be somatic as well cognitive?
Yes, I mentioned it a little bit before, right? I believe that the emotional triggers, the emotional, our emotional responses to trauma, they can shape our neural pathways. And but it is not just a one-way road. And after a while, it becomes both. It's impossible for us to actually see what's causing what. So our neuro, we get dependent and we get enslaved by our brain. So in the same time that we are creating these neural pathways and we are storing these traumas in the brain, the same way we are also being driven by them. So it becomes a cycle. And that's why it is so hard to break the cycle and so hard to be able to reshape the responses and reshape also our own brain. So, what we understand, and this I'm bringing now from the knowledge that I've been acquiring studying the Praxis, the existential program. Um, there is one. psychology that we always mention in our courses and everything, that he is the father of the purpose, the sense of purpose, the therapies that take into consideration how our life purpose is important. And that when once we start to follow this direction, we start to actually be able to be open to understand better what we are doing to prevent our achievements, to prevent life changes that can be significant. Once we decide, we have to make a decision. We first of all, we cannot do that for others. Each one of us has to do it for ourselves, and we have to actually have this decision made very seriously, like, um, I am more than this, I deserve more than this. So what am I doing right now that's preventing me from achieving my life purpose, the life I deserve, from achieving my accomplishments, from being more self confident, from admiring myself, from being proud of my achievements and proud of myself. And that is more than cognitive. This is not just cognitive, it is all together. But this sense of purpose, along with the self awareness and this identification of these repetitive patterns and the unconscious mind and everything else, these all work together, along with the reconnection with the conscience you were before you were born. So it's not just on the brain, it's not just on the emotional body, it is in the consciousness. It is the main goal here is to reconnect with that consciousness that you are, with all the parts that make that consciousness. I don't know if that's clear.
Yeah, I think you answered very well. Thank you so much. We are getting to the end of our program. Ellen, I am going to share your email. Can you
Yes.
explain about that?
Yes, I have, as I said before, I have a PDF. So if you're interested in getting more information, in that PDF, I have some resources, some recommendations of books and scientific papers and conscientiological papers and articles, and also infographics, more it's more detailed than what we showed here before in the beginning of our talk today. So if you're interested, just email me and I'll send it to you for free.
Mhm. Very well, and we are going to have a course based on this search for purpose, and this is going to be happening. Let's see.
Yes, we have the Praxis Cycle course. And as I said before, the life purpose or the proaxis is something that's in, so important for us to actually achieve this sense of identity and this sense of accomplishment, because we made a decision, we made a plan before we were born. That's our main premise. So, in this course, we basically answer a few questions about this. Three of these questions are what is the meaning of our lives? And we also can be more close to finding out what our role in the world is and overcome that feeling of emptiness or that weird feeling of having something to do, but we don't actually know exactly what. But basically, we have 8 modules, and in each of these modules, we are answering one specific question about our proexis or our existential program. It's a very comprehensive course, and that was the first course I actually was as a student when I came back in 2019, and I am one of the instructors of this course, but I am a forever student. I'm always learning. Even when if it's my class, I'm learning. So it's very fascinating and very motivating to learn about the existential program. So I really recommend this course to everyone.
Okay, and the information you can sign up through proexologia.com and Ciclo Proexis.
Yes.
And we thank you so much for being here with us today. And if you enjoyed this talk, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Next week, no, not in the next 2 weeks, we are going to have instructor Djalma Fonseca talking about ectoplasm. So that's going to be another interesting topic to discuss. So guys, thank you so much and see you in our next program. Thank you.